So may Allah bless us and guide us. Ameen.
So we have a related online question from a sister who says, in this age, youths are kept in a state. Thank you. In this age, youths are kept in a state of heedlessness and tempted towards haram in so many ways, especially in the West. What can we do to create an environment where youths feel encouraged to come to the masjid and become stronger Muslims? And then there's another related question from a brother in the UK, so I'm just going to ask both of them together. How should the younger generation overcome issues which relate to custom when many of the imams come from a foreign culture and do not understand the culture of the West?
Well, this is a good point. Again, we have to think things out. Like, you say, how can we get the youth to come to the mosque? Are you sure you want them to come? Are you sure?
SubhanAllah.
You know, these 3 women embraced Islam in California and LA. And, you know, the brother who gave them Shahada, he was really happy. He taught them and so forth. And then they said, we're so proud. And we know there's a mosque on such and such a street, and we're going to go in there and pray. He said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You know, it's like one of the things you want to do is to protect people from going to some of the mosques. You know, my grandson, Allah bless him, you know, he's now, you know, doing very well, and mashallah, he's learning Arabic and Qur'an, and he's in university, and, you know, his father's taking really good care of him. But, you know, he's handsome, he's an athlete, very intelligent, people like him, and I take him to the mosque, and it's like, basically, everywhere I go in the society, I feel at home. And I'm happy to be there, and when I go to the mosque, it's like, I don't feel that way. So again, the mosque has got to be a mosque, and the mosque has got to be welcoming. You know, what if you bring in a person off the street, you know, who's down and out? What if you bring in a prostitute, for example? What if you brought in, you know, a person who is not dressed properly? Would that go over in the mosque? Could you do that? You should be able to do that. These are the people who are supposed to come in. You know, we had a sister in Chicago embrace Islam, you know, and she came in, and some uncle came up and told her, you know, you've got fingernail polish on. Haram, you know, you can't do that. Your wudu is not... This is a matter that we disagree about very strongly. But even if it were true, like, you know, she just became a Muslim. And this is not the way you correct anything. She left Islam. And, you know, there was a brother who embraced Islam, and he had earrings, golden earrings in his ears. And an uncle came up to him, and like, this is haram, you have to take this off, and, you know, and it's like, he said, I didn't become a Muslim for this. He's an African American. It's like, you're going to get up in my face? I just became a Muslim? Like, I'm sorry, I'm out of here. You know, it's like, this should never be. Never be. And the mosque has got to be a place where, you know, you can come in and we will be upright and good, right? But like, this is not a club, you know, and it is not a sanctuary from the outside world. It's a place where we come to worship Allah together, and we want to bring people into Islam. And when you bring them into Islam, you bring them in at the first floor, not the 10th floor. You know, so, but we've got to get our mosques right. That is a societal obligation. And when our mosques, you know, are places that are extremely unwelcoming, you know, and where, you know, we cannot even do the deen in some cases, because sometimes they have really narrow-minded positions. Our way or no way, you know, then that's got to change. Doesn't mean that we have to necessarily change those mosques. That often could lead to greater fitna, but at least create sacred space where people are safe, you know, and where they can come into this deen and grow, and where we can ask questions, and inshallah do what is halal. Follow the sirat al-mustaqim. Find the mean. You know, and what was the second part of that question?
The relating to the imams to foreign.
Well, I mean, you know, again, you know, culture is really important. You know, like, and again, we are the greatest shortcutters in the world. You know, it's like, what's the easiest way we can do this? You know, I mean, you know, okay, so in Taraweeh, we'd like to read the whole Qur'an. But nobody understands it. You know, so let's get a speed reader. You know, who's on, what do you call this?
Steroids.
What are those things you take that...
Steroids.
yeah? You know, he recites the Quran. You know, I've seen some of those. It's like, I didn't even know what surah he was in. Except when he said Qaf. I said, okay, this is what Qaf. And then, shoo! It's like he's done with it in 2 minutes. I mean, this is not permissible. But this is the way that certain cultures decided that they would do it because they want to get done with this quick. You know, and they don't understand Arabic, and you know, just the sooner we can get out of here, but get the reward. You think you'll get the reward for that? Butchering the Quran. We've got to think. We've got to think. But you know, imams. You know, like I was in India, and I went to beautiful places. One of the most beautiful was Kerala. And in Kerala, you know, this wonderful brother was brought to me, and he's brought by his sheikh, and he was saying that he can speak English. You could use him in America. And I'm saying, like, you know, he is a great brother. You could use him in Kerala, okay? You can use him in Kerala because he speaks Malayalam. He's from Kerala. He's a good scholar. He understands people. In the United States, no, sorry. Maybe he could come and he might be able to do certain things, but like, why do you want to send him to us? You know, Kerala needs people like this. He knows the culture here. So this is another societal obligation. We must produce scholars at every level in our society for us. And the fact that we can't do that today is really a reflection of the fact that we are very young. And what we've accomplished in the 30 or 40 years of our presence here in Canada or in the United States is really amazing, to tell you the truth. Even though there are a lot of things that are not very pleasing. But this is a societal obligation of the highest order. We have to have institutions that produce real scholars. Scholars who know the Deen, who know Arabic, who know the Qur'an, who know Hadith, you know, who are able to recite, and who understand this people, this society, literature, psychology, sociology, economics. And again, like, how can they do that? Well, if you're picking the dumbest people to be the imams, this is often the case in the Muslim world. If you've got a brain, you're going to be an engineer. Haram alik. You know, if you're going to, or you could be a doctor, something that makes money. You know, money is what's important for us in many cases, right? You know, you can't marry that man, he doesn't have any money. And you can marry that one, he's got lots of money. Does he pray? No, he drinks, he gambles, you know, but that's okay, he makes lots of money. What's happened to us? Our priorities are all inside out and upside down. Okay, but we must produce our own indigenous teachers. And indigenous means born from within. Doesn't mean that they have to be ethnic, you know, African Americans or Hispanics or whites or Native Americans. Welcome. We need that too. You know, but it means, I mean, you're also indigenous because you're born within this society. You know, whether your parents come from India, Pakistan, you know, Syria, wherever they come from, you can speak the language. And you know what people mean. And you know how to relate to them. Okay? So that's what indigenous means. You know, you're at home in this society. And you've got to have that. And this doesn't mean that we look down on the imams that are here. God bless them. Some of them are absolutely fantastic. You know, but a lot of them, some of the best ones, no American could understand what they're saying. And no Canadian. Maybe, you know, maybe 10% of what they say is Arabic. And, you know, that, you know, you can get away with that in the mosque, but like, you can't in this society. They don't know word choice. Sometimes they make the worst mistakes. It's embarrassing. You know, and they never study language. It's like, what is wrong with us? What's wrong with 100%? You know, when we go to school, we expect you to get 100% or, you know, 95%, right? And it's not, no, 20% is okay. You know, it's like, you know, I know brothers that have been here for 40 years and they still can't speak a grammatical sentence. Like, why didn't you study some grammar? I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. You know, learn what these words mean. Still mispronouncing. We have imams. I mean, okay, like this imam, take him to an English intensive course and get somebody who can tell him, pronounce it this way, brother. Say it again, say it again, say it again, say it again, right? That's really important. We went to Quebec last year after RIS, and I had a brother who, speaks French. MashaAllah, he speaks French. He can speak it like a Parisian or like a Quebecer. And I was so happy to be with him. He took me into some beautiful places in Montreal and north of Montreal. And I love French anyway. French is a beautiful language. But I'm not very good at speaking it. I've never really had a chance. I can read it really well. And so if I speak it, I'm embarrassed to speak it. I don't want to make mistakes. I want to be able to speak it right. And he was just beautiful. And you should have seen the response. He takes me into the hotel and starts speaking French. And they're so happy, they're laughing and everything. And he said, this is Omar. And without an H. And, without a D. In other words, I'm not a lobster, right? Because Omar is a lobster, right? And, they laughed. Sort of a corny joke, I would say. But, So, it's really, you've got to be able to play the strings. You've got to be able to hit the chords. Then the people listen to you. Then the people listen to you. So again, but why do we bring imams like that? Because they don't cost too much. You look at what mosques are looking for imams. They want him to know Arabic and Urdu. They want him to know the Qur'an and tafsir, to be hafiz, to be able to do tarawih. They want him to do marriage counseling. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. They want him to do public speaking, be an interfaith. It's you need 10 imams, okay? And then they want to pay him how much? Well, enough that he can not starve, right? Get a place to live. It's we don't cut corners on this. And in the Muslim world, a lot of people being trained in religious institutions are failures. It's they can't do anything else. So they go to religious school. How is that going to help us? And again, so these institutions that we have that are growing up, like Zaytuna, it is a societal obligation to support them. And alhamdulillah, they started with a good beginning. And I think you all here have started with a really good beginning. We build on success. We don't take giant steps. Let it grow little by little. But, this has got to be supported. And we have ultimately got to be able to develop curricula and techniques that we can teach people intensively. And we need the best minds. The best minds. And the best teachers. And then you'll see things happen that will really make you happy. Inshallah.
So I have a couple of brothers. Do I have any questions from the sisters? Sister Ella, go on. Ask your question.
My question is, how do we go about, I just came from a theater with her, and there was somebody visibly Muslim who showed tremendously poor adab, to the point that everybody in the theater was so completely disappointed. And the people that were non-Muslim showed better adab than the person that was Muslim. So in terms of correcting the behavior, I didn't do it publicly because I didn't want perception of Muslim correcting Muslim. But what I did afterwards is, because she was already corrected very publicly, is I spoke afterwards to her and said that these aren't the proper rules that you need to follow when you're here. But I was just wondering in terms of, from a sacred knowledge perspective, what would be the adab in approaching other people when you see breaks in adab?
Well, this is a whole science, and it's something that Sheikh Faraz and others could teach you in great detail. And it's been carefully studied by our scholars. But one of the things is that, first of all, will anything that I have to say be listened to or not? And, will my speaking make the situation worse or better? Because some people, there's just not anything you can do. And so there's a whole adab of that too. And there's no simple answer. It's something you've got to study. It's not difficult thing to study, but that's very important. That how do we correct people? When do we correct people? Do we have the knowledge to correct people? Because that's like when you say, for example, that brother, this is haram. You have no right to say that unless you know that it's haram by consensus. Because there's some things that are haram for Malikis and they're not haram for Hanafis. You know, we were in Russia this summer and we were with the Tatars, who are beautiful people and, you know, who are the great carriers of Islam in Russia. They ruled Russia for 250 or 300 years, the Golden Horde. And before them, you know, there were the Turks, you know, of the Volga River, Bulgars and others. Amazing. And, you know, the Russians were not very nice to us. I mean, poor people. I actually have a deep love of Russia and of Russian people, you know, and, you know, but like what was done to the Russians under the Soviet Union, oh my God, Stalin, they were just basically traumatized to death. You know, and they have goodness in them. But, you know, when we were in Russia, it's like no Russian was happy. No one smiled. And, you know, after dark there in the summertime, it's like 2 hours, right? But they all get drunk, you know. They get their bottles and stuff like that. And it's like a third world society. If they didn't have natural resources, it would be a complete failure. You go to the Tatars, and the Tatars are alive. The Tatars look like Russians. And mashallah, we went to this beautiful restaurant. The Russian restaurants, it's like they always want, even though we paid, right? We made an agreement with you, and we had like 50 people. And it's like the Russians, that they just want to make it clear that like we don't like you people. I got meals in some of the restaurants that like, wow, I mean, you want to show me how bad you can cook? You know, they bring some of the potatoes already still in their foil, and it's like, But you go to the Tatars and wow, they produce this beautiful food. And I took a salad, it had meat in it. They said, all the meat is halal here. And then I taste this meat, and I said, I've never tasted meat like that. What was that? And so I asked, like, what kind of meat is that? They said, horse meat. And in the Maliki school, you don't eat horse meat, right? It's like haram. And I'm just like, you know, I don't know if I can hold this down. And then one of the brothers said, no, he said, in the Hanafi school, it's okay. Maybe it's makruh, right? You told me about that, it depends. But the Hanafis, you know, there are certain cases where you can eat horse meat, and then for the Tatars, that's really important. And they said, look, these horses were raised to be slaughtered for meat, and they are halal. So, inshallah, you know, we can follow that. But, you know, so horse meat, you know, if you're a Hanafi, you could, it's okay. And you have to know those things before you say it's haram to eat horse meat. And, you know, so there's an adab for that. But then there's another thing which is very important, really. And that is like, you know, in the art of war, be like water. Water always goes the easiest way. It seeks the lowest point and it goes the easiest way. If there's a rock here, it goes around the rock. And this is why also in building dynamic, transformative communities, it's very important to be able to find a way to get over to the people who are basically on the same page, whom you don't have to begin with A, and you don't have to, you know, change all their character, but they're already okay. And I would call these people, you know, the vanguard. You know, that you look for the vanguard, because these are people that are easy to work with. These are people that are ready to give. These are people that want to understand. And we can build with them and then gradually begin to have an effect on the whole society. But to think that you can go to a mosque, you know, where everybody's still fighting over the last election, and so who was a friend for 20 years now won't speak to his other friend because he got elected and he didn't get elected. It's like, you know, that's not necessarily a good way to spend your time. And so we have a good opinion. We should not look down on people. We should pray for people. But instead of trying to change people who sometimes are not it's maybe not even possible to change them. Look for the people that don't have to be changed. Listen to the people who can understand and begin to work and bring them together and organize them, and then they become a powerful force to transform everybody else.
So we have the brother at the back in the green who had a question. I saw a hand up. Okay, so the brother in the blue.
I have a question. Is it possible for like an aspect of the Sharia to run contrary to the spirit of the Sharia?
Is it possible for an aspect of the Sharia to run contrary to the people of this region?
To the spirit of the Sharia.
To the spirit of the Sharia? Well, you know, Islamic law is vast. And you wouldn't necessarily believe that if you saw some of the fuqaha today, because they make it as restricted in some cases as it can possibly be. But some of the great scholars of law that I knew, in the Muslim world, when I was coming back to the West 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago, some of them told me, and they were masters of the law, they said, listen, any problem you have, be very clear that the Sharia is not a problem. In other words, the Sharia has solutions to everything. And again, as you'll find in these papers, our fuqaha also very clear. Ijtihad, legal interpretation is the real stuff of the law. There's got to be ijtihad. And great scholars like Al-Qarafi, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, they say that it is a matter of consensus among the fuqaha, that legal opinions cannot just be taken from books and dictated to people. In other words, when you give somebody a legal opinion about something like, say, a divorce, or about a marriage, or about an economic issue, or about how to deal with a convert who's come into Islam, and maybe she's married to a non-Muslim. I mean, that shouldn't be. But how do you deal with that issue? You're just going to break everything and send her back to Islam. So here, the faqih has got to exercise sound opinion based on knowledge of the law. And they've got to look at the law, and they've got to look at the situation, they've got to look at the person, and they have to give them a tailor-made solution. And this doesn't mean that, like, okay, the Sharia is going to be thrown out here. No, this is the Sharia. That you've got to give people solutions that work. And the fuqaha say that people who take fatwas directly out of the books, without looking at you and looking at your situation and your culture, that they are misguiders. They have gone astray and they lead astray. And this is a sin. And this is what a lot of people do. They memorize all these rules, and you give him a question, and then he remembers that answer. This is the answer. There was an issue several years ago, where a particular Maliki faqih was in California. And this man was a good man, but he should not have ever been asked to give a legal opinion about anything. He was a Bedouin. And they took him to a big maximum security prison. And so he tells them that Jumu'ah is not valid here, because prisoners do not do Jumu'ah. It's like, oh my God, do you realize what you just said? Yes, in a traditional Islamic society, the prisoner who's usually in jail, they're not in prison. We didn't have prisons, we had jails. They do not have an excuse to get out of jail to go to the Jumu'ah prayer, where they could escape. So the prisoner, you just keep him locked up. He goes to the Jumu'ah, and like maybe his gang, will come in and set him free. Okay, but like a maximum security prison, it's like if these brothers and sisters are not allowed to get together on Friday, they're going to get killed. Just to start with, because you've got to have protection in a maximum security prison. You know what happens in a maximum security prison. People get raped, people get killed. It's dangerous there. It's really dangerous there. You know, so it's like of course they can do Jummah. They've got to do Jummah. You take that away, what do they have left? You see, so it's like, this was a sin. And it was a great sin that a particular brother asked him to even give his opinion on this.
Allah.
He doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know anything about it. He can't imagine what happens in this prison. You see, so this is really important. The law is there to solve problems, not to create problems. You know, al-usru yajlib al-taysir. You know, hardship brings alleviation. That, you know, if you're living in hardship, the Sharia does not want you to do that. And this doesn't mean that it wants you to go out and have a good time, you know, and do just anything you want. But, you know, you've got to be able to function in this society, and we don't want to break your psyche. We don't want to ruin you. And we want you to be able to contribute to this society. You know, some of our brothers and sisters go abroad and study. And the places they go to are blessed in some cases. And then they come back and sometimes they stay in their apartment for a week because they can't deal with the society anymore. And like, what do you expect? You went to a society that is blessed, but they're still an agrarian society. You know, and they don't even have the internet. And then you come back to England or the United States and like, you know, this is a very different place. We have to have a transition. We have to teach them that, okay, now how do you apply this in Oakland, you know, or in Chicago, or in Toronto? You know, and how can you live here and not feel threatened? You know, so these are things that are really important. These are things that we have societal obligations. You know, we have got culture. Culture is what teaches you how to negotiate reality. How do we speak to these people? You know, we've got to be able to do that. And we have a lot of people that are very good at that now. I mean, look at this brother, I like him a lot, Ahmed Rihab, you know, who's in care in the United States. And like that brother, wow. You know, he gets up, you know, on Fox News, and, you know, they have to watch what they say because, you know, he's practiced. He knows how to speak. We've got to have people like that. You know, there's a saying among politicians, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. You know, so like, we don't do anything about politics. I don't like politics, and I'm not a politician. But we've got to have people that are there representing us, or we will be on the menu. That is as simple as that. You know, you've got to have people who can do this. These are all societal obligations. May Allah, and again, like you look at some societies like the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, and like the Turks are coming back. You know, and that is to me one of the greatest blessings of all, because the Turks do have their heads on their shoulders. And they do have roots in traditional Islam. And, you know, they do know how to take care of business. They're amazing people. Look at Fathullah Gulen. Allah bless him and give him health and cure him. I mean, this man, look at what he did. Just sending, you know, it's like we can't change the schools, we can't change the curriculum, but we do change the teachers. So we begin to prepare these transformative teachers and send them all over the world. And then even though you're teaching a curriculum that may have in it things that are not good, the students will come out shining. Again, transformative education, what's the secret of that? Transformative teacher. A teacher who was transformed by this knowledge, even if it's mathematics or sociology or, you know, PE, physical education. So inshallah, Allah enable us to have success. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Amen.
If I could just make one comment about that.
Sure, absolutely.
About the question about can a legal ruling of the Sharia go against the spirit of the Sharia, there's, you know, a couple of things that one should consider. Like if one has a question, right? That sometimes if there's a ruling that appears, for example, not to make sense or appears to be unduly difficult, Imam Abu Hanifa has a beautiful principle that he was talking specifically on theological matters, on matters of belief, but they also apply to matters of law. That any time there's something of the deen that makes you confused, immediately affirm that you accept as true what is true with Allah. And then take the immediate and effective means to shore knowledge. Right? So you read something about the deen that disturbs you, or someone is saying something about the deen that is disturbing. If you don't have the means at that point to judge the answer, or you're not able to accept the answer, instead of remaining in that point of difficulty and distress, that how could this be true, or oh my God, you read something in the Atlantic that's saying that there's some manuscripts in Sana'a that show that there's mistakes in the Qur'an. Okay? I mean, if every scribe in the world who wrote the Qur'an was divinely protected, that would be an incredible miracle. Right? That if you wrote the Qur'an, you could not possibly make a mistake in it. I mean, that would be a dazzling miracle. Right? But immediately you affirm that I accept as true whatever is true with Allah. And then it becomes your obligation to take sure means of finding out the truth. Right? So go to people who are trustworthy, go to sources that are trustworthy. And because sometimes it may be that that the issue itself might not be contrary to the spirit of the law, but you're not understanding it correctly, or you're not seeing its benefit or its wisdom. Or sometimes the person who's saying it may be respectable, may be trustworthy, but they may be in error. And just to give a very simple example, a friend of mine who has a business was setting up manufacturing contracts. And he asked a scholar, and he said, well, you should note that manufacturing contracts, and they're called istisna, they're not binding in the Hanafi school. So my friend was confused, like how can I get into manufacturing contracts, and at the end of it, it won't be binding? And so I knew, I'd studied the issue, but I went to ask one of the senior fuqaha alive, Mufti Taqi Usmani's older brother, Mufti Rafi Usmani, and he said it is haram and a grave sin in our times to say that manufacturing contracts are not binding. And this is actually the fatwa given by the Ottoman scholars, and it's encoded in the Majalla that Dr. Umar referred to. But just to bring out the legal aspects of the issue, I said, Sayyidi, but the classical texts of the madhab do mention that the manufacturing contract is not binding. That's if you actually, till the Majalla, if you open any book of Hanafi fiqh, from the earliest times, right up to the middle of the 19th century, all of them will tell you that the manufacturing contract is either a promise or it's a non-binding contract. It's a contract, but you could back out of it. But so Mufti, as I asked Mufti Rafi Akashi, he said, someone who gives fatwa on that position has committed a sin and they're not fit to give fatwa. I said, how? He said, because a person who gave that fatwa just from the book either does not understand the issue, in which case they can't give fatwa, or they don't understand the times, the context in which the ruling is being applied, and that too means that they're not fit to give fatwa. Right? So he said it is obligatory in our times to give fatwa that it is binding. Why? Because in a traditional society, one of the, in many traditional societies, your name is worth more than your life. Right? Your name is worth more than your life. You could not possibly go and make a commitment and back out of it. Because it would shame not only you, it would shame your family, your tribe. It would. I mean, it's unimaginable. This is my name. I have no other. Right? But things are different now. Things are different. So someone may be a qualified scholar, but they're not specialized in that matter. So they're just answering based on what they know, but they may not realize the implications in that particular matter. And and there's a respectful dissent in that. You say, Jazakallah khair, if the answer appears to be of harm, right? And that's why these principles are so important. You hear an answer, it appears to be of harm, and they could not possibly be harm in a ruling of the Sharia. So what do? You don't. I mean, you don't have the tools to go and argue with the sheikh or whatever. You may seek clarification, but it may appear that the person doesn't actually know. So you go and you know that we don't have clergy in the sense that their word is divine or divinely protected. They get there, right? And you go and ask someone else, and actually then you should ask yourself who is worthy of asking, right? In that particular any kind of matter. So that's just one example, right? That something that's textually transmitted, you know, leading contemporary scholars would say it is not just a mistake to give fatwa according to that, it is a grave sin to give fatwa according to that. And the examples of that are numerous, right? And that's why, but there's also the second part, sorry to go on, there's a second part that when we see these kinds of issues, right, it is easy to criticize the scholars that why don't they do this, why don't they do that? Because people like asking complicated questions. And like a lot of doctors, for example, they're really annoying. Right? And not just because people insist that their daughters marry doctors, right? But because you know they think themselves very smart, which very often they are, sometimes not. But they ask really complicated questions, right? So I have a default answer now, because you know, medical ethics is one of the areas where most Islamic research, legal research has been done in the last 40 years. I answer these complicated questions. So I'll say, you know, right now we have little or no legal research taking place in North America. So I can just give you a very basic general answer. But anything further than this is a societal obligation which requires all of us to be supporting that legal research. But since that support is not there, the legal research isn't there, so the answer that you need isn't there. Right? But it's a reality, right? So there's nothing in our deen called fardul ulama, you know, the obligation of the scholars. Right? The things that the ulama do are from the societal obligations. They're, you know, at the front line, but they need the support of a whole army. Just as, you know, there's no obligations of social workers. That homelessness is a problem for social workers. It's a societal obligation. The social worker may be at the front line, but if we don't support them, then, you know, they can't possibly do their job, right? So you know, that's something that, you know, should keep us awake, right? That, you know, this is one of the most serious things, that there's people who have divorce questions and no one to answer their questions. People have counseling needs, there's no one to answer their questions. People have doubts about their deen, and there's no one to give them answers, right? So, you know, that should make us really see what are we doing? Because you said, why don't these people answer? You know, people at SeekersGuidance, for example, people submit questions. I said, I'm mad at you. So why? I submitted my question 12 hours ago, you didn't answer it. Right? Now, of course, you know, the sunnah is, you know, you have to uphold good character. My nafs wants to tell them, I'm mad at you because you're not supporting us. Right? But of course, you say, you know, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We'll endeavor to answer your question within the next 24 hours, etc. Right? But the nafs has some truth there too, right? What are you doing? Right? Inshallah, that's all I wanted to say.
Very beautiful. Beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. Jazakallah kulli khair.
Okay, so we started a little bit late, so I'm going to take facilitator privilege and go on for an extra 10 minutes. We have 3 questions that I saw in the audience. Oh, okay, we have 4 questions that I saw in the audience.
5, 6, 7.
No, 5, 6, 7 doesn't come in, right? So I only can count to 4. So I'm going to go to the sister here, and then I'm going to come to a brother, and then I have a sister over here, and then a brother over there.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question concerning a lot of the youth and a lot of these sisters that do come up to me and speak to me. They are Canadian or American. Their parents came as immigrants, so they came in for the education, for the future of their children. Now the kids have grown up and they've embraced Islam. They've gone through identity crises of being, I don't know, Pakistani or Middle Eastern or African and Canadian or American at the same time. The issue lies in them wanting to go on this path of learning their religion, and at the same time they want to volunteer, help around. They have big plans. They want to help the community as much as they can. But now there is a block from the families. There is a block from the community. We came here for you to study. We came here for you to get a career. You shouldn't go on this path. Or the families will be very culturally oriented. And they don't separate from religion and culture. So it's sort of like culture takes precedence over religion. So I myself have gone through this, and I know a lot of people are coming up to me and going through it as well. And they're like, where's the fine line? Where's the fine line? What are we supposed to do at this point?
Why don't you respond to that question?
Could I actually just ask another couple of questions to come together?
Then we'll get confused.
Really?
Yeah, well, I think, would you please answer this question?
Okay, then I may have to just say that there's only going to be another one question.
I'll be brief, inshallah.
Okay.
I'll practice, brother. One of the things that the Sunnah teaches us is that most dichotomies are false, right? In that it's not either this or that, right? The Sunnah, one of the amazing things about the Sunnah is that it shows us how to take into account all considerations. The Prophet ﷺ said, "A'ti kulla dhi haqqin haqqahu." Give everyone and everything that has a right its due right. And in order to balance one's own goals, whether they be seeking knowledge or a career path. So, you want to become an architect, and your parents say, "No, beta or beti, become a doctor." Right? How do you do it? Do you pursue your goals, or do you listen to your parents? And the Sunni path would be both. How? Essential to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is this idea of mudara, right? That you uphold what is right, you uphold what is beneficial with due consideration of people and circumstances. Right? This is essential to the Sunnah, right? That you have mudara, which is discretion or tact or consideration. That you uphold what is right, what is beneficial. So if you genuinely think that given your circumstances, it is of benefit for you to seek knowledge, then seek it. But do so in a manner that is considerate of your circumstances, of your parents, of where Allah has placed you. Right? And that's why we need to be spiritually grounded to know, to have this, what Dr. Umar, and if you weren't at IMO, listen to his khutbah. Sayyidi Nadir will have uploaded it by late tonight, or by tomorrow sometime. Right? He was talking about this having understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding from Allah that what does Allah seek from me where He's placed me. So in these things one has to know, right? What is the right of, for example, our parents. And because we don't seek knowledge, we have default assumptions that are not true. That we think that Islam tells us that we have to listen to our parents unconditionally. And it's simply not true. Right? That there's no command, and I'll get in trouble from this, but it's true and I'll stand by it. And there's no command in the Qur'an or in the Sunnah that tells us unequivocally to obey our parents. The only unequivocal command with respect to obedience of our parents is to disobey them. Which is that if they call you to worship other than Allah, do not obey them. Yet keep their company in this life in a good way. So part of it is knowledge, right? That we put ourselves in a dark, tight corner, feeling overwhelmed, whereas the knowledge of this deen, true knowledge, understanding of the Sunnah, is a light. It's empowering. It tells us how to fulfill all rights with that beautiful balance, right? How? The right of your parents is that you be good to them. The right of your parents is that you be good to them, that you be respectful, considerate, caring. Not simply that you obey them. Obedience is a means to these other matters. Then the Sunnah also teaches us that the Prophet, one of the ulama mentioned very beautifully, that the Prophet ﷺ did not simply listen to what people said. The Prophet ﷺ listened to hearts. that what hearts are expressing. So there's some random sister called Shagufta. She wants to be an architect. Her parents said, Beti, no. You know, you've got your high school degree, now you have to get married, and we want grandchildren. Okay? And that's not her ambition right now. Right? So what does she do? Right? Now, if you simply listen to what they say and you try to sort of enter into a battle over them, you know, they're going to defend and they know how to co-opt you, right? And you'll be frustrated. But if you listen to the concern that they're expressing, they say, we want you to become a doctor. It's not so much that they want you to become a doctor. The Sunnah teaches us to understand what people are telling us. So when they say that, what do they really want? They want you to be successful. They want you to be secure. They want you to be happy, right? They want you not to struggle as they did. They have all these underlying concerns. Your career path, they may think that you don't understand, that you're seeking knowledge. They have worries that you might become fanatical like so many of your aunties. Right? You know, the NRA. You know about the NRA, Dr. Umar?
National Rifle Association.
The newly religious auntie. Right? You know, armed and dangerous. A little knowledge.
More dangerous than the National Rifle.
Right? So, you know, so your parents are often have legitimate worries. They don't want you to become like those people they think are crazy and probably are to some extent. So what do? Right? Instead of arguing with them about what you want to do, the Sunnah teaches us to respect what they're saying and to understand what are their concerns. And you allay those concerns. And if you allay those concerns, you can pretty much do anything you want, right? Like I wanted to go overseas and study. My dad, God bless him, he doesn't like arguing, but he's very dramatic. He just got up, he walked away. Right? I didn't know what to, I actually went to one of the scholars and asked him, like, what do I do? He said, don't explain your motives for going. Right? Explain it according to his concerns. He said, what do you mean? He said, explain how you'll be able to provide for yourself through this career. What are career paths that you could pursue after it? Potentially, even if they're not career paths that you want. Like, I've never wanted to go into academia. But he said, explain that. Once you do this, one of the paths is that you could get a PhD and become a professor. For a lot of immigrants, I can become a professor? Oh, mashallah. Yeah, that's like, you know, even though he doesn't want to. So you do it on their concern. I explain that. Then my dad's response was just, whatever you do, you know, make us proud. Right? And so, you know, so that's important. And one of the, just to hand over to Dr. Omar for the next question, one of the very important things related to that you know, that the culture that we grow up in puts us very often in difficulty, is that you should consult. It's central to the Sunnah of the Prophet, the most intelligent human being that will ever walk on the face of the earth, walk on the face of the earth. He always consulted. The first thing he did after getting a revelation is he consulted Sayyidah Khadija at every stage of his life, right? But we have this sense of, you know, individualism. I can do it myself, and we put ourselves in hardship, right? Ask someone who can help you, right? And there's people, you know, it's nothing new. Everyone goes through these kinds of struggles in their life. Sometimes you may ask a friend, sometimes an elder in the community. Sometimes it may be a scholar. Sometimes it may be, a guidance counselor in school, or, there's so many different people that one can consult. And that's a door that one should always have open, always consult, right?
It's really, Allah bless Sheikh Faraz and bless this wonderful gathering and all the people here. But, fiqh means understanding. And this is fiqh. And again, it's like fiqh is not that you memorize all these things and you can just pull the right book off the shelf. Fiqh is that you understand and then you know how to apply it. So may Allah give us fiqh in this religion. And then, we begin to understand how to work beautifully and effectively, and how to really not compromise our deen, how to do the deen.
Okay, so my 10 minutes of prerogative. My 10 minutes of prerogative became 12 minutes over. So I'm really sorry to all of those who I missed. Okay.
Someone has a question.
Okay. Right, so sisters, because Shafraz is really, really nice, he's allowed one last question from the sisters. Sorry, brothers. So, sisters. You had a question, do you want to answer? Okay. So we had a sister wrote down one of the questions that she had, and it was whilst you were giving your answer earlier on. Apostasy, yes, no, maybe. How does this apply or be answered today?
Well, this is a huge question, and again, every time has its own reality. In Judaism and Christianity, in ancient Judaism and ancient Christianity, apostasy was the unforgivable sin. Unforgivable sin. In Islam, the apostate's always allowed to come back. Islam is very merciful, and you could, this is a good thing. I mean, to study history. For example, our Prophet ﷺ and early Islam is totally agrarian. Agrarian society, agrarian civilization. Agrarian civilizations are nothing like post-agrarian industrial societies. So that's why a lot of the things, in order to understand them, you've got to know the culture and the reality of that time. But things like apostasy laws and stuff like that, these have to be studied in the context of their time. And if we were to be really serious about apostasy law, unfortunately, lots of Muslims will be apostates. Because, they do things, they say things, they believe things that if you took a strict approach in the law, they would be in trouble. So this is the kind of thing that I think we can discuss in another context. And these are really important things. There are a lot of questions like that, again, that come up. And we need to be able to understand them and understand how to relate them to our society. I could mention a lot, but I wouldn't dare do that, because then it just sets off all these, what about that, what about that, what about that? It's not good to raise a question if we can't answer it. But I think the main thing, again, is that in this time, what is really imperative is for us to teach the unknown religion. That, people just don't know this deen anymore. And this means sound theological instruction. So that people can look at this society and look at the ideas in it, the different theories, Big Bang, evolution, whatever it may be, and then they can understand what is our response to that and why is it the truth. And then they can be strong in this society, and they can be vanguards in this society. So we have to give people the means by which they can believe, the means by which they can understand. And this applies to Muslims across the board. Again, how many Muslims today study theology? Although the study of theology, basic theology with understanding, was regarded by the traditional ulama as the first obligation. And for most of us, it's the one we never do. For most of us, it's just you learn how to make wudu, you learn how to pray, you learn how to do the other things, you learn performance, but you don't learn how to think. You don't have the cognitive frames. You don't know, how do I look at the world and believe in God? Especially in an age which is so confusing. So this is what we want to do in cases like that, is let's give people a reason to believe. And community is absolutely essential to religion, whatever religion that is. If you want the religion to show and to shine, and to affect people, you've got to have a dynamic communal base. And that's why creating a community like this, You know, where, I mean, mashallah, I mean, who is stressed out tonight? I hope nobody. But like this is an environment in which I hope everyone feels free, you know, to like talk and to ask questions and so forth and to learn. This is community, you know, and then religion becomes powerful. And especially Islam, because Islam is something else. It is God's religion. It is God's religion. And, you know, when we begin to have community, then the community begins to speak for itself by its dynamic example, and it brings people in. And you've got to, of course, be able to take them in and take care of them. And, you know, we've talked about children and the problems of children. How do you keep children in Islam today? But as we've said before, if we develop this community so that we are filled with understanding, we are filled with brotherhood and sisterhood. You know, we work well with each other. We benefit from each other and we begin to do things. You know, then the children, you know, they are the greatest beneficiaries because they become proud of you and proud of what we've got. And although, of course, you have to still teach them and you have to counsel them and so forth, but they don't have an identity crisis. You know, it's like, I'm a Muslim and I'm really proud to be that. We are really beautiful people. We really live in a nice way. We do good things. You know, once you divide the society, the community, and you begin to fight and backbite and complain all the time, the children are among the first to check out. They're like, I'm not interested in this, especially when I can go out in the society and have a really good time. And the fact that I have a Muslim name, that's not going to be a problem. A lot of people that would take me in and we would have a really great time. So, you know, the community has got to be there. And this community has to grow on the foundations of sound knowledge and wisdom, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, societal obligations. And again, you know, in your supporting Seekers Hub and the people that are here, you are doing an obligation. And this is a societal obligation. And although you look at it probably as voluntary, the fact is that it has a reward that is vastly above that. Because you are not doing just a voluntary act. A voluntary act is like maybe giving to a poor person on the street or not giving to them. But this is a societal obligation to support. And when you support it, your reward is huge. Because you are helping to take iniquity off the backs of all the Muslims. So inshallah, Allah bless us and, you know, bless our days and bless our lives and let us grow, protect us from fitna, protect us from trial and tribulation, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, protect us from the evil eye and the evil tongue, ayn as-su' and lisan as-su', you know, and enable us to be, you know, courageous, inshallah, in being a vanguard. You know, there's so many things to talk about, really. And, I mean, you know, there's so much. And really, I mean, we can do miracles, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. You know, permaculture, which we've talked about from time to time, and what Sheikh Imam Afroz works with in Australia. I mean, the potentials of things like that, you cannot imagine. And it will be necessary as we go further down into the 21st century. And the changes that this can bring about in us are just, you know, immense. But we need real knowledge for that. And we need really, really talented people. And people who are ready, you know, to work and to sacrifice. But to win the game, not to lose it. This is not, you know, taking an uncharted path, you know. But the work that is ahead of us in the United States and Canada and Great Britain and the English-speaking world and the French-speaking world and the Spanish-speaking world, these people have a right to the deen. They do, and wow, they are ready for it. You know, and really, I mean, when I came back to the United States from India, I had a beautiful trip in India. I mean, really powerful trip in India. And we came back to Dubai, and, you know, I was giving shahadas every single day to Sri Lankans and to Filipinos. And the Filipinos were then having their mothers and fathers call and their brothers and sisters to take shahada. And we had a big problem because the maids spoke Tagalog, their English wasn't so good. I mean, basically, I just say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. I mean, I don't know how to explain this because but it's like, what kind of potential is there? Immense. Sri Lanka, the Philippines, what about the Caribbean? What about the beautiful Caribbean? But again, we've got to know how to do this. And we've got to know how to create community. Al-Habib Ahmed Mashoud al-Haddad, Allah have mercy on him and be pleased with him. Probably the most beautiful human being I ever knew in my life, and probably ever know. Radiates the love of the Prophet. And over 100,000 people embraced Islam through Al-Habib Ahmed Mashoud. Over 100,000. But look at the way he did it. And this is mostly in East Africa. And also in other places. But they would go into villages and they're beating the drums and playing the flutes and singing these incredible anashid to wake people up. And that's what Habib told me. He said, look, if you're going into idolaters, a lot of these people are idolaters. He said the idolater's heart has darkness in it. And you have to get light in it. And you do that with drums and with the flute and with music. And then they open up and you put the truth in. And then he would give them shahadas, mashallah, tabarakallah, and then they come back again and again and again. You don't just take the shahada and then leave them. Right? And then he will leave there in the village one of his disciples to teach them. See, community. Like, you can't leave this man or woman that just took the shahada. You've got to give them a communal base. Okay, so there is huge potential for this deen. Huge potential. And mashallah, with this incredible technology, with these wonderful brothers and sisters, we have global reach. We have global reach, and we have to do that. And the world really needs this deen. One of the realities of the history of religion is that, first of all, human beings are homo religiosos. Human beings are the religious animal. Never in history do you find Homo sapiens without religious culture. It may be true, it may be false. Even when you have the most secular, predatory regimes, like Stalinist communism or like German fascism, they have got to present their regime in a religious light. So Stalin becomes Father Stalin. And you have the cult of Stalin and the cult of Lenin. Okay, and it is like a religion with the Day of Judgment, which is the day of the great proletarian revolution, when everything will be hunky-dory. And Adolf Hitler, you've got to have the myth of the Aryan race, which is a total myth, a distortion of history, and then you'll have meetings at night in palaces of light, and songs and music and soldiers and so forth. It's all religious. The swastika, which is taken from India, where it means good luck, and turned around because that works in the Christian psyche in a way you cannot imagine, because the cross is a big thing. Now you've got a crooked cross. And they just, it affects them deeply. So these were secular alternatives to religion. Although they don't play out very long, because people need the real thing. And whenever you bring people together, Hindus, Buddhists, secularists, communists, socialists, Christians, Jews, and so forth, and they all see each other, you have massive religious crisis. Why? Because human beings have got to have a religion that explains to them the reality they live in. That's why, again, we've got to have real theological teaching so that you can understand the modern age. And you can talk about quantum mechanics, because it's a major proof of God. So is Big Bang. You've got to be able to understand that and interpret it better. They just saw, a glimpse. They don't know what they saw. We can show them what they saw. Okay? But when that happens, then you've got to have a religious
formation, a religious interpretation, a religious construction that is satisfactory for the people. You know, and the 21st century, you know, and some great people said this, and I've always believed this. This will be the century of the great rivalry of the religions. A new religious movement is born in the world every 12 hours. Most of them live on the internet, and most of them don't have more than just a handful of followers. But what does that show you? That human beings are groping to find the answer. And Arnold Toynbee is a person who's Arnold Toynbee, like, wow, we should really study Arnold Toynbee, because that man is special. He was brilliant. Not that everything he said was right, or that everything he said was brilliant, or that it would necessarily be helpful to you to read his books, because he is a master historian. If you don't know that history, you know, you probably won't be able to follow it. But this is one of the things Toynbee really knows well. And you know, again, when Jesus came into the world, in the Roman Empire, traditional Roman religion was dead. Jupiter, Juno, Mercury, people respected the gods. They didn't believe in them anymore. Nobody went to temple. You know, Greek religion, the same thing. And there were competitions for a new religious thesis. Neoplatonism, Stoicism, the cult of Isis, the cult of Mithra. And then dualistic Christianity and Trinitarian Christianity. They come into play the game too. And unfortunately they take some chameleon changes, which they shouldn't have taken. But traditional idolatry was basically dead. Why? Because you brought all these people together. So in this global age, you know, like in China today, Confucianism is basically finished. Taoism is finished. Buddhism is not that strong. The religions that are strong in China today that are spreading are Islam, which is a Chinese religion, and Christianity. And, you know, so this is really important. You know, that what we're doing is the societal obligation. You know, it's like global societal obligation. And it takes really talented people like you. You know, and we've been blessed with great helpers and great teachers and great scholars. You know, this will be fun. I'm telling you, this will be exciting. Because you're going to learn to understand. You're going to learn things. You're going to teach things. You know, but this is what Toynbee knew. He knew that, you know, in the 20th century and the 21st century, even though he said this at a time when most people believed that atheism and secularism was the way of the future, religion is an illusion, they're done with it, it's gone. Toynbee knew that's not true. Human beings are religious animals. They have got to drink sometime. They've got to come back to the well sooner or later. And this is what we see, 1980s, 1990s. Things all come back. And so for Toynbee, it's like, where is the religious thesis today? You know, that can meet all the needs of the global family. And for Toynbee, hands down, it's Islam. It's Islam. Christianity does not have the means to do that. As Dr. Sidi Abdul Hakim Murad, Allah bless him and protect him, this is a brilliant human being. Really. You know, but as he says, Islam is the only religion that came into the modern age with its whole system of worship intact. That's a sign. That's a sign. I mean, isn't that amazing? After we had been through the torture chambers and everything was done to us in the 19th and 20th centuries to destroy us forever, and we come into this modern age with our religion intact. Wow, amazing. Okay, as he said, Islam can do it. He didn't say Islam will do it. He said Islam's got everything it needs to win and to satisfy human needs and to bring the human family together. We can bring the Filipinos, the Sri Lankans, we can bring all the castes of India. And India is not a Hindu society. Never believe that for a moment. The Brahmins are Hindus. And the upper castes are Hindu. What percent are they of India? The Shudras, the Dalits, the untouchable, who are over 65% of India. You think these are Hindus? They were never allowed in the temples. They're never allowed to listen to the books. You know? These are people that we have got to play to. You know, we have got to do that. And they are our brothers and sisters, even though they were untouchables. You know, they were people who could not live in any section of the town where other people are who are better than them. You know, really, we've got to do these things. We've got to do these things. But he said the problem with Islam is what? The Muslims. That you have Muslims in the world who don't understand a thing. They don't even know what they've got. Okay? So this is what we have to have. We have to have Muslims who really get it. Look at people like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Imam Zayd. You know, look at Dr. Abdul Hakim Jackson. Look at Dr. Matson. You know, really. And look at the people right here. Look at yourself. I mean, when you've got that, then you've got the winning team. You're the only one that's got the medicine. You know, and then we can religion's got to have continuity. You know, our culture has got to be tied into Mecca and Medina and to Jerusalem and to Khalil, Hebron, absolutely. You know, we get our culture from Canada. Native Americans, God bless the Native Americans. Great people. You know, bring that to life. Select out of that the French, the English speakers, the Hispanics. They've got culture. They've really got culture. You know, our own past and so forth. You know, but also this is tied to Mecca and Medina and Jerusalem, holy Jerusalem, and holy Hebron, Khalil, the fourth greatest mosque. We never give that up. And that's our identity too. Okay, when we begin to do that, give the people continuity, give the people meaning, give the people community. And this is the gift that you've got to give. You have it to give, and you've got to give it. And inshallah, Allah will enable us to do this. And you know, look, this is a dear brother who's come from Australia. You know, why can't we go to Australia too? For a month or two. Why not? New Zealand, South Africa, England, Ireland, Guyana, Trinidad, the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, Jamaica. And we can begin to create communities around the world that we can visit, we can go to. You can take a vacation there. We build, we learn, we work together. This is the global age. When you begin to play that game, you know, then, mashallah, tabarakallah, you know, you are giving the world the remedy that it needs, you know, to be well. Inshallah. So may Allah enable us to be inspired and to be wise, you know, build on success. And this is a success, you know, it's a success. You know, when the baby is born, that is a success, right? And then the baby has to be nursed, and the baby has to be taught, and you've got to give it some time to grow up, right? So, inshallah, may Allah make these moments, you know, when you're here, you know, you'll be so proud of this, wallahi, that you were here. And there are a lot of people here in this time, people like Imam Zayd, people like Sheikh Hamza, people like this dear brother, and this dear brother. What will people say about them in 200 years? What will your great-great-great-grandchildren say about them and about you? These were people who made history. That's what we're about, making history, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and showing the world how to live again. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Al-Fatiha.
Jazakallah khairan. This brings an end to our In Conversation with Dr. Umar sessions, but inshallah will not bring an end to our In Conversation sessions, because we've been speaking about hopefully having In Conversations at least once a month with different scholars over 2012, and so we will be putting out the program for at least provisional program for 2012 by RIS, so please do keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, inshallah. So I have a few announcements to make. In response to well, we at Seekers Hub and at Seekers Guidance are trying very hard to put forward the knowledge without barriers, and we live by the knowledge without barriers ethic. Our aim is to provide everything that we do for free, inshallah. And for many of us, that's the only way that we will be able to access traditional knowledge. But for some of us, we would be able to contribute to it. And for those of us who are able to contribute, in fulfillment of your societal obligation, please do. Because it's through that that we are able to continue. It's through that we are able to continue to bring scholars such as Dr. Umar and Imam Afroz, and to shafar us to sit here day in, day out, giving of their time and giving of their knowledge, inshallah. So you can donate online, www.seekershub.org/support-us. So just go to the website, it's all there, inshallah. And so please do consider donating to that. You can also donate to Seekers Guidance, and that's seekersguidance.org. So, and now in terms of announcements, this is Dr. Umar's last session at the Hub, but not Dr. Umar's last session in Toronto. He will be doing an Islam and history session all day on Sunday at Humber College. That's with the Qurba, it was in partnership with the Qurba Institute. So you can go on to qurba.org, or you can go onto the Seekers Hub website and get the link if that's easier, inshallah. There is you do need to register for that, right? So please do. Okay, so and the places are almost booked up for that. I understand because of where the session will be held, there are restricted number of people that can attend. When you hear Dr. Umar speak about history, you just do not want to get out of the room. So it's definitely one not to be missed. So please do go onto that for all our. It's well, Sadie, I'd let you do that. Dr. Umar will give us in fact, Sidi Hamad will give us a brief précis on what the session will entail after I've made this announcement, inshallah. For those of you who are online, unfortunately it won't be live streamed, because already I can see questions coming up for that, but it will be on the website. So once it's recorded, and Sidi Nadar's looking at me really scared, once it's recorded, it will be online, inshallah. I won't say overnight because I'm married to him and that's not fair. But definitely the next day I'll nag him enough to get it online, inshallah. So it won't be live, but you will be able to access it online. Now, as far as Seekers Hub goes, Imam Afroz is still here. And Imam Afroz doesn't know this yet, but he will be, we have a sister session that Ustadh Shirin will be teaching, 11 till 1 on Sunday, and Imam Afroz will follow that with a sisters only session, 1 till 2, inshallah, on Sunday. Like I said, he doesn't know yet, but he's kind of shaking his head, which says yes, to me. Imam Afroz will also be with Shafraz to continue our regular programming throughout the week. Please go online to check what that regular programming is. Now, for 2012, we are putting the schedule together. We are putting the classes and what the curriculum, what the classes and what the scholars, etc. will entail. So we are having an open town hall meeting on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock at the Hub. So if you want to get involved, if you want to give ideas, suggestions, if you want to come and talk about what it is that we should be doing over the next 12 months, and also if you want to hear Imam Afroz talk a little bit more about paradigm shift, because he also doesn't know he's doing that, but inshallah he's going to talk a little bit more about paradigm shift on Tuesday. Please be here, and that will also be live streamed. This is great, I'm learning so much from Sheikh Faraz. It's like the sunnah of my teachers.
Okay, one thing really important about Tuesday is that part of the idea of being a hub is that it's a place where people gather, right? And it's very, very, very important to get your ideas, your feedback, your suggestions about both the educational programming, but also other things that you'd like to see. And if you have a good idea and you have suggestions on how to make it happen, inshallah, we'd be keen to promote and facilitate that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, and if you can't make it, but you have some ideas, then just email Dr. Bano. It's just Bano at BANO at seekershub.org, so that she can at least bring those ideas to the meeting. And just before this meeting, I was playing delay tactics because so many of you weren't able to come on time. So there's some incredibly good news, right? I can't share it because if I did, the person who told me the really good news would be very upset. I get people upset enough, that I don't want to upset, this special person. But there's really good news, and you'll be hearing something about it soon as I can, right? Like, a conscience can sometimes be a pest. But just thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because these are tremendous blessings, to have Dr. Umar here for the whole month of December, to have Imam Afroz come here, and really, he's someone very special. And it's one of Dr. Umar today gave the khutbah on having a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I am as my servant thinks of me, right? And so we should have high hopes, and always keep this project and all good projects in your du'as, right? If you're not making if a week goes by and you've not made du'a for Zaytuna, for Qurba, for all these excellent projects, for the different scholars that you've benefited from, right? Then that's from a lack of appreciation and concern. So inshallah, I interrupted Dr. Bana's announcements, and inshallah the session is closed. Al-Fatiha.